Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on our latest webinar, as I want to kind of give you a guide through the world of PR and comms if you're intrigued and interested in a career in motorsport, because it's one of the best places of all. So if you've got any questions, then do please feel free to get them in. There's a Q&A tab just at the bottom right. So launch your questions there and we will try and get through as many as we can. And we have a poll for you as well. So if you go into the poll tab, where would you most like to work in the motorsport industry? And there are some options for you there to have a little play along with as we go. So let's first of all welcome our panelists to today's webinar. And as if by magic, hopefully they're all going to start their videos and ping up for you. So we've got Liz Brooks, we've got Julia Fry, we've got Bradley Lord, we've got Fiona Miller, and we've got Rebecca Jones. So let me introduce them all to you, and then they can tell you a little bit about themselves. First of all, everybody, if you unmute yourselves and say hi.
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 Good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, that's fine. So let's start off. We'll go round the table and introduce everybody properly. So the first person we'll go to is Liz Brooks. She is the head of media and communications at Rokit Venturi Racing Formula E. Liz, if you would, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. And first of all, thanks, Jenny, for having us. This is a great opportunity. I really enjoyed the session that you did last week too. You had a great panel then, and it's an honor to be with these guys today. So yeah, I'm Liz Brooks. I'm head of media and communications for the Formula E team at Rokit Venturi Racing, but I haven't always worked in Formula E. I started out nearly 2 decades ago in Formula One, working for a chap called Eddie Jordan, who I happened to bizarrely bump into on a photo shoot when I was working in PR for Kawasaki. So messing around on a bike and bumped into a Formula One team boss. And 2 weeks later, I had myself a job in Formula One, having never watched a Formula One race. And since then, I've worked team side, driver side, race promoter side. And by that, I mean the host city or circuit that's hosting the race itself. I've worked with the sport directly, and I've done lots of other things outside of motorsport too. So, but now Formula E is where it's at for me. I work with the sport's only female team principal, Susie Wolf. And it's a fantastic challenge. It's amazing to be part of a movement for good in terms of sustainable mobility. So that's me.
Love it. Thanks ever so much, Liz. So we'll chat with Liz a little bit more in a moment. Next up, let me introduce to you Rebecca Jones. Rebecca, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, I am a freelance motorsport PR, so specialise in motorsport. Although my background is, I've done a lot of agency side, so lots of science, engineering and technology is where I started. Did more consumer, then into automotive, and 10 years ago, set up my own business, and I've had clients including Aston Martin, who I still work with today, Bentley, BMW. I've got drivers in DTM, so I like to do lots of stuff. I've got an esports company, so that's really exciting for me to do something different. And I'm involved in a driver management company as well. So yeah, super busy, and yeah, lots going on.
Always lots going on. The life of PR and comms, I feel, is that way inclined. And everybody, I think, has lots of different hats everywhere, which is always a fascinating insight into the lives of what people do. Let's speak to Fiona Miller next. Fiona, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be fantastic.
Hello, everybody, and I echo everything that Liz said, and thanks for giving us this opportunity. I think we've all received over the years many sort of emails, letters, whatever, sort of saying, you know, how do I get into motorsport PR? And I think this is a really good opportunity to sort of actually try and give people a bit of a leg up if possible. So I'm head of communications for the FIA World Endurance Championship. I've worked in motorsport for longer than most of you have been alive, but well, the less said about that, the better. And mostly in endurance racing, but not entirely. I've also I've worked for teams, I've worked for drivers, the Grand Prix Trust, which was primarily looking after former Formula One people, but lots of different areas. So I really feel that I have an interest in all of motorsport. I do a little bit of work for, aside from the WEC, a company that sponsors lots of different types of motorsport. So I find myself writing about ice racing or MotoGP or, you know, rally raids or whatever. So I really do feel that it's good to be open-minded and have an interest in everything.
Good stuff. Next up, let's go to Julia Fry, who's head of comms for Extreme E.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, for asking me to be part of this panel. I think when I first saw, you know, who was involved, I felt like you have imposter syndrome, because probably the newest, you know, everyone's talking about an amazing heritage in motorsport. I'm always really upfront that, you know, this is my first job in motorsport. I've been head of communications for Extreme E for the last 18 months. But, you know, before that, I've worked always in sport for the last almost 15 years now. It was funny totting that up yesterday. I feel very old. But it's not been motorsport until this point. But I think, you know, my real passion is sport for purpose and sport for greater impact. I've always followed motorsport. You know, you can't help but follow and be a fan of, you know, the F1, and my family are all really into motorsport. But yeah, before joining Extreme E, I was head of comms for the Clipper Around the World yacht race, and also worked on agency side at PR agencies. That's kind of how I first got into sport, and working for everything from London Marathon, New York Marathon, got into a weird marathon phase, Olympic marathon, where I started working in the Olympics at the Winter Olympics in Vancouver 2010, and then joined the London Olympics, and then also, you know, Wimbledon tennis, Australian Open, and quite recently the IOC as well. So I feel like, I mean, I just love sports in general, and have been able to, you know, be very lucky enough to work, you know, client in-house and agency side for a lot of different rights holders, and work with a lot of different sponsors. And, you know, getting involved in motorsport, I'd say the last 18 months have been just an incredible journey. I found it, you know, so interesting. It's always great to learn a new sport, but you know, you have to, when you're new to it, totally equip yourself with those around you that really do know the sport inside out as well. So we do have a motorsport specific PR agency, which are a massive help to me. But I'd say 18 months on, you know, I definitely don't know everything, but yeah, massive motorsport fan now. So hoping it's coming across in Extreme E. But yeah, just really, really happy to be asked to be part of this. I think I've got a very different background to most people here, but more than happy to tell you about my journey and experiences as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Julia. And last but not least, joining us ahead of time, because he's always super punctual, but actually more than punctual, is Bradley Lord, who's Mercedes-Benz Motorsport Communications Director. Hi, Bradley.
Hi, Jenny. Hello, everybody. Lovely to meet you all, see you all, hear from you all. Thank you again, just to echo the other panelists for the invitation and the chance to chat with you all today. Julia mentioned imposter syndrome, and as I hear everybody's incredibly varied and sort of diverse careers that they've done, I have a little bit of that because I'm basically still doing my first job. I turned up at Enstone, what was then the Benetton team, in September 2001 as an intern, and basically haven't left since, and no one has yet found me out and kicked me out either. So my career has been all the way through in Formula One. Primarily on the PR side. I spent 2 years as a journalist with Autosport and F1 Racing back in sort of 2008, 2009. So 2 pretty exciting years as a British motorsport journalist, with Lewis's first title and Jensen's win with Braun GP. But then otherwise have spent all my time either at Renault or as it became after Benetton, or with Mercedes since 2011. So I'm lucky enough to lead an incredible team who are responsible for all the media work, social media with the team, and then working very closely with our partners as well. So no 2 days are the same. There's always a curveball or two coming around the corner every morning you wake up, but it's an incredibly fun, rewarding, challenging environment to be in. So look forward to explaining a little bit of it to you all today. So thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you ever so much to all of the panel for giving their time. Thank you to you for watching as well and signing up. And if you do have any questions, we've already got quite a few coming in, then make sure you pop them on the Q&A. I know a few of you are having a chat as well on the chat function, so keep on doing that, and use this in these very strange COVID times as a kind of way of networking and finding other people who might be able to help you, or that you can just buddy up with in this strange times and see what you can achieve. So I suppose we've had a lot of questions coming in ahead of this webinar, and one of them is from the younger people who are asking, do they definitely need a degree to be able to get into your roles? Or are there other ways? So Liz has gone straight in there. So we'll go to Liz first, please.
I would say categorically not. You don't need a degree. What you do need is a certain type of attitude and an open mind, and you need confidence. And even if you have a degree, but maybe you don't have a communications or PR or media degree, and there wasn't such a thing actually as a PR degree when I was studying. So I didn't even finish my studies. I got a summer job in the first year of my higher education. I managed to talk my way into a PR agency, and that was me. So I think, great, don't anybody, if they're watching this and in the middle of their degree and really struggling, don't think it's all a waste of time. It's categorically not. I'm sure educating yourself throughout your life is incredibly important. But what I would love to say is it's absolutely not essential to have a degree to be in this role, but it is essential to have a certain type of attitude. That's really important.
Who else would like to pick up? Anybody else? Rebecca?
I think the important thing here is if you look at the people who are on this panel today, and we all have very similar roles, but all had a very different route to getting there. I think that in itself says that there is no one way to get there. And I think it's like Liz says, it's that passion, it's the determination, it is having the confidence. And I think it's very easy particularly when you're younger or when you're on the outside of motorsport, to look in and think that all of us here today are super confident and we've always been this way and we've just strolled into things and know what we're doing. And the fact that we're all sitting here with a little bit of imposter syndrome about each other, and the fact that we're probably all a little bit nervous about saying the right thing today. We're all just humans inside, and you just have to sometimes dig deep, be confident, know that you've done your research, know that you know what you're talking about, and that's what will get you to the end goal, not a piece of paper or a degree.
I would agree completely. I mean, I didn't have a degree in motorsport, but and in fact, my first job wasn't in motorsport. It was working for Perrier, the mineral water company. But through that helped me. I worked for both the marketing manager and the PR manager, and that helped me define that actually I much preferred PR to marketing. And I think it's really important to have those experiences in different areas as well. And then the PR manager left to go and work for a sports PR agency, which was quite big in the area at the time. And we worked for people like John Player and Canon, and I mean, lots and lots of different sports, but mostly motorsport. And I went and started there, and that's where it all, went from there. And I think working for an agency is a really good way of sort of getting a foot in the door, because you will be asked to do lots of different things, and you'll get experiences from lots of different areas and different people. So I don't know what the others think about that.
Yeah, I guess chiming in on my side, I'm probably the only one that maybe it sounds like I do have a degree in public relations. I think I knew at college I just wanted to work. Well, I worked out that communications was probably one of my skill sets that I felt would take me somewhere in my career. But funnily enough, when I turned up at my first job interview outside of university, I was really surprised to hear they say they don't normally hire people with a PR degree. I mean, there weren't many places that do PR as a degree, so that really wasn't an option. There was, I think, 2 universities in the UK that had a PR course at my point. But since I've worked with so many people that have not gone that route that I have. I've also hired a lot of people that haven't got PR degrees. And actually, as Liz says and as Rebecca says, really what you do need is passion for whatever you're going into. I think it comes across. I personally, before I read any CVs, I always read a cover letter first, because I think it's good to know why people want to work for you, and that kind of, there's a lot of long hours in motorsport, and that passion and that reason to be there and that knowledge, the background knowledge is really important. When I work on major events like Olympics and Wimbledon, a lot of those people are only hired for games time, which is 2 to 3 weeks at a time, but they have other jobs outside of that, and some of them are school admins or doing something completely different, but have in press and comms, it's not just about writing, it's not just about knowing how to pitch a story. There's a whole element of press operations and everything from accreditation and sort of front-facing organizational points. So your way into PR and comms can be so different, and there's plenty of people that have it as a bit of a side hustle. So there's many skills that you don't learn in the PR course that you do need in PR and comms and operations. So it's just kind of understanding what those roles are, having a passion, deciding you want to play a part. You know, things like Olympics and big sports are also great because they take on a lot of volunteers, and it's a great way to go and, you know, get your toe in the water, test it out, and you start creating contacts through that, and it just builds. So yeah, I do have a degree, and I've done this from you know, college, school, university days, but it's definitely not the norm. And when I'm hiring, I certainly don't take a qualification as, you know, the key deciding factor.
Bradley, did you want to come in?
I just endorse that. I think at Mercedes, we do look at people's skills, we do look at their background and what they've studied, how well they've done, but that plays almost a secondary role versus behaviours and recruiting according to the types of behaviours we want to have in the team and in our culture that are aligned with our values. So somebody's character, somebody's attitude and mindset are more important and more relevant for us when we're making hiring decisions than have they done this type of degree or that type of degree. I do have a degree, but I have my job in spite of, and, you know, not remotely because of the degree I ended up studying, having studied French and English literature. I've done no Shakespeare and no Balzac in my time in Formula One PR. The language has been helpful. But, you know, I started my first job by pretending to be in France, giving a false address over there, and then staying in the UK and working at Benetton that became Renault. So I think the thing I've always found is if someone can get a foot in the door, the right kind of character and the sort of person that ends up succeeding in our world is the sort of person that once they've got that foot in the door, then finds a way of either kicking or levering it open and walking through it. And that matters way more than any particular formal skill set or specific qualification. Certainly on our side, I think it's probably a little bit different on the technical side. They want to know that the designers can design, they can use CAD, they have a high level of sort of technical and competence there as well. But I think on our side, it's very much behaviours, mindset, and attitude that sets the good people apart from the rest.
Yeah, I think
Sorry,
said there. Sorry, sometimes it's about the way you get someone's attention, because, you know, getting an inbox email is absolutely great, and I do file all CVs and try and get back to everybody. But sometimes, you know, it's almost your first challenge is selling yourself and communicating about yourself, and how you do that really sets a tone for how you're going to do that for your client and for, you know, for your employer. So things like being really inventive about how you get people's attention, that's a really impressive quality. You know, DMing someone, finding their phone number, picking the phone up, and actually, you know, going around a slightly different route, you kind of get an idea for how inventive and creative someone can be just in how they sell themselves. Because if you can't sell yourself, that's the first kind of test of you know, communications and how you go about that. So just always be aware, just there's more than one way to get on people's radars, and try them all. Really, it certainly gets noticed.
So if people are looking to how to get a job, like a proper career, I know from my side, I had to put in a lot of hard work to try and get a lot of experience before someone would ever pay me. Is it the same in PR and comms? Would you expect to try and get an internship or get some work experience before you can really start opening doors? Fiona, what would be your advice?
That seems to be a route that is more and more common, because, you know, people find that on both sides, perhaps it's a way of actually sort of putting a toe through the, you know, a toe in the water, if you like, and seeing if that's something that you take to or not. As I said before, I think, you know, it doesn't do any harm to try and seek work experience in any type of field, any type of job, because actually what you want is somebody that is coming to you with some sense of reality, that doesn't expect you to be parachuted into a sort of, you know, 30 grand a year, I'm a graduate type of, you know, la-di-da job. You want somebody that's prepared to put the hours in, to muck in and do several different types of jobs, to be able to be a team player, to get on with everybody else. And I think that working anywhere and knowing, you know, what's required to actually to be valued as a sort of key person in a team is really important.
Kyle Schwab's been in touch and he's saying, experience versus education, what would you consider to be more important? Rebecca.
Just on this point, when I was at university, I took a job in a PR agency, and I would deliberately choose my modules for university so that I could work as many hours in the PR agency as I could. And I'd do 3 days a week there. And I know that when I left university and was applying for agency jobs, it was definitely the fact that I'd worked in an agency that got me the best jobs, got me the interviews at the best jobs, not the degree. It was the fact that I had experience in writing press releases, in actually doing the day-to-day job. Like, one of my jobs was, email was quite new then, so my job was to print the press releases, fold them, do the franking machine, walk them in the post bag to the post office, and all of these things that you can't learn this in a degree, though. We used to have to send the photos out on the little negatives, and then the phone would ring, and they'd have, I sound very, probably, these are probably words that people watching this don't even understand, but it just made them realize that I knew what this job was. I didn't think it was this glamorous champagne drinking, first class flights, PR job that you might have seen on Ab Fab and all of this. I knew that it was a slog, and doing long hours, and calling up journalists and asking them if they got the press release, which is the most painful thing when you're 18 years old. But yeah, that's definitely what made me stand out, 100%.
I fully agree with you, Rebecca, and it's funny when you think back to those early days of agency life, of printing off the releases and folding them up and putting the photograph in, and like you said, the sort of baptism of fire of picking up the phone to journalists. You literally had your Rolodex or your little black book in those days. There wasn't social media. You couldn't stalk people on social media or DM them. We had no LinkedIn. So definitely, I fully agree with your view that experience versus education, from a PR and communications perspective, can really work in your favor, but it's also about networking. And I think that's been a general theme that we've already touched on so far in this talk. It's networking is essential, and standing out from the rest. And you might feel like you're, I don't know, bothering people, or it's too much. But actually, if you want to do this job, you really need to be able to put yourself out there and be confident. And I think a lot of the time, confidence comes from experience. So volunteering, internships, and using your network as much as possible. I think in a way, it's a little easier nowadays because we do have social media and we have the social networks for people to put themselves out there. Find who you like and find the style of the people that you like, and think of how to really endear yourself to them, how you position yourself, but also what you like about that particular person and how they operate, and appeal to people's ego. Comment on things that they've done recently, comment on articles that you've seen or stories that they've been involved in. And I think that shows that you're paying attention, it shows that you're confident in yourself, and it shows that you've done your research. And I think they're really important things too. There is, education definitely has a role to play, but I think experience is equally as important, if not more so, when it comes to getting your foot through the door.
I completely agree, Liz, there on and everyone on their points, really. I mean, my degree course, I think, only really suited me because it involved a year in industry. So when we came out of the degree, learning on paper and in textbooks and things is totally different to doing it in real life. And I think employers know that. And I think, as I say, working on events, you need to know kind of what it takes, and being able to, demonstrate awareness of that is the starting point. But yeah, for me, I was very lucky that my job included, and if you are looking at degree, included time in internship, which obviously getting your foot in the door is the first challenge. So I guess the degree course kind of did help me with that. But yeah, I think experience for me is more than education, and that's coming from somebody that has a degree in public relations. I've learned way more being on an event site for even a week, I think, that was applicable for the rest of my career. But as Liz says, I think LinkedIn is an incredible tool. It's grown so much the last few years. I used to think you'd only be on it if you were looking for another job, but engaging, as I say, following people, you can now follow hashtags. If it's specifically automotive that you want to get into, you can follow what's being said, and not just engaging people, but being able to see what's going on and stay kind of up to date with trends and what other companies and series are doing. I think that's definitely a really good way to do it. And maybe just go into the networking world of, I didn't know anyone that works in sports. I did it from networking. And again, that is so crucial. And building a base of network, it might sound quite difficult at first, but just take it slowly as well. Like, don't rush in. Think about when you go on a first date. If you rush in and you're way too keen immediately and you ask all about, the job is the end goal, but sometimes just making contacts and actually almost mentors and people that maybe you can just ask to go for a coffee with and ask their
advice. I'll just jump in there, Julia, because I just want a real life example here of this, and remembering that everyone is a human. And Fiona, I call her my Mama Miller, because she's always been there for me, because that's the thing to remember, is that we, particularly in motorsport, we're generally nice people who are doing something that we love. So therefore we're happy to be here.
Speak for yourself, Rebecca.
Okay, I'm PRing here, Bradley. Stay with me. We all love our job that we do, but we're all happy to be here.
No, I love my job. I'm just not that nice. That's all.
Okay.
That was the distinction. Jennie can confirm.
We already know. Don't worry. Yeah. So for Fiona, for me, was the person that when I did walk into sports car racing 9 years ago, I think it was, Fee, was the friendly face who was not only there for me, kind of for little bits of advice, but actually when had some really difficult PR crises, to know that I've got Fiona there, either physically on event or on the end of the phone. You will get these people in your career, and I'm sure everyone here today has that person, and they know exactly who they are. So don't ever think you'll be on your own, because because we all look after each other. We're all humans.
That's funny, because not everybody's in the same place on each other's screens.
Yeah, no, I know.
And it's like, who? I don't know.
All I was going to add to that was, I think the first thing when someone I know is hiring, the first thing they do is pick up the phone to somebody else in the industry and go, do you know anyone who's good? Who do you know who could do this role? And that's where the experience thing will count above all else. Getting yourself into something, showing what you can do, showing that you're prepared, as everyone has said, to muck in, roll your sleeves up, pack boxes, do the basic bits that are the building blocks of the PR game, basically, is really, really important. And I think listening to Liz talk about, starts in PR agency, Rebecca as well, Fee, it's the agility, the versatility and adaptability you need is really, really important too. All of our jobs have changed unrecognizably. I used to feel I actually had a degree in photocopier engineering, because the damn thing would blow up every day because it got too hot, because you were printing 300 press releases to run them up to a media center. So lots and lots has changed, but the things that don't change are the network, the contacts, and the fact that people still pick up the phone and say, who's good? Do you know anyone who's good? And that's where experience and getting yourself in front of people and working with people has, always pays off, I think.
I just want to try and get through some of the questions, because they're getting more and more in. So the one that's been upvoted, I don't get that phrase, but anyway, the one that's at the top of the poll is it possible to do an internship in one of the teams when not living in the UK? So I'm going to broaden that out to an internship in motorsport when you're not living in the UK, because we've been inundated with that question from people as well before the webinar started. So Liz, let's go to you first. I mean, how difficult is it to break into the motorsport industry, bearing in mind so much of it is based in the UK, if you're not in the UK?
It's a great question to ask the person that works for the only motorsport team based in Monaco. But
I'm pretty sure a lot of our audience are going to be based in Monaco.
Loads of cheap flats in Monaco. It makes internships easy.
Look, it goes back to what we've been saying kind of from the start about putting yourself out there and kind of understanding who you are and what you've got to offer, and then being able to articulate that and find the right contacts and connections. And I think what I would say is, like, if you're coming from overseas, and yes, a lot of the top teams are based in the UK, but there are plenty of motorsport teams based outside of the UK. And there's also, wherever you are in the world, there's racetracks. There's ASN, the local sporting authority for motorsport. If you want to work in motorsport, there's plenty of other ways rather than just going for teams. And don't also think that it has to be a Formula One team or a Formula E team. There are plenty of other levels of motorsport as well. So I would say have your goal, but be really realistic with your goal as well. Don't just, it has to be this or nothing. be incredibly open-minded and look at different areas, look at different ways of getting into things, volunteer for local events at your local racetracks. The FIA has an incredible initiative called Girls on Track for young girls and women who are looking to get into motorsport. They have great networking events. There's local networking events wherever you are. So really do your research. But in terms of that internship, don't just think about a UK-based motorsport team. There are plenty of other options. Spend more time thinking on how you position yourself and how you articulate why it is that you want to do it. It's not just enough to just want to work in motorsport. What makes you different, and why do you really want to do this? Because it's great in many ways. It's the most incredible career, but it's also incredibly tough as well.
I actually work for a French company, so I'm one of only two non-French nationals. That's not strictly true. We have a Brazilian and Chinese as well, but they live in France. So I think it upsets quite a lot of them that English is the common language between all of us. It's the common language in the paddock. It's the international language, despite the fact that in all regulations are done in French and English. It's the international language that everyone uses to communicate. So I think to have a very proficient level of English is really important. You can work anywhere you want, but you've got to be able to communicate in that language. And I think that's an important point for people to bear in mind. It's no good saying, oh, my English is quite good, when actually, all you can do is say, sort of, can I please have 3 beers or something like that? You've got to be able to, you've got to be able to be ready to communicate on your chosen subject in a more than one language.
Bradley, you have numerous language skills up your sleeve. Do you think that is now becoming quite an important part of the F1 community, to be able to have a couple of languages? How many do you have? 4?
3.5, I'd say.
That's
But I can, it's certainly been really important for me. My French is why I got my job at Renault. My German was a huge help to having the job when I went to work in Stuttgart at Mercedes, and I turned up on day one with only A-level German and about a 10-year gap, and then everything was happening in German. So that was an interesting sort of getting dropped in the deep end of the swimming pool. I think it does really help, without a doubt, to be able to be conversant in, as Fiona said, English absolutely first and foremost, because it is the sort of common language across all of the industry. Then anything else you can add on top is definitely beneficial. And being able to talk to people in their own language, it gives you a warmth and a proximity to them that you wouldn't get if people are being obliged to speak in their foreign language in order to accommodate you, I think. So that's definitely helpful. I'd say on internships, I think the one thing to bear in mind, you'll hear, for example, that Mercedes is a team of 1,000 people that work in Brackley, but actually the PR comms marketing side is only a tiny fraction of that. So for us, internships are quite difficult to support anyway, because we have the sort of philosophy that if we want to do it, we want to do it right. And we often find ourselves asking somebody to come in and they find themselves stuck in the office. We're all flying around left, right and centre on event and doing things like that. And it's actually quite difficult sometimes to build a meaningful internship that's actually of benefit, and you don't just feel like you're putting someone at a desk and they're sort of an observer to everything that's happening. So that's a challenge for us, certainly in our organisation, and I'm sure for others as well. But we do run, for example, every 2 years a comms apprenticeship, so someone can come in and be an apprentice, a communications apprentice, and really work in our internal comms, which allows you to learn huge amounts about the business, about the profession and what needs to be done, without too much of the risk factor that comes from putting someone out there with sort of cynical or difficult journalists and things like that. So that's proved a really useful training ground for us. You're not in that club, Jenny, but there are some.
I don't know what you're talking about. Carolina Kamata, on the subject of internships, has said, what may be the best ways to get some experience while studying? She's doing a 3 years bachelor's degree program apart from internships. So are there other opportunities and other ways in that aren't internships? Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to. Yeah, I mean, internships are definitely helpful. As Bradley said, sometimes the opportunities for those and the work it takes to kind of bring people into the industry when you're a very small team can be a challenge. But there's lots of other, it doesn't have to be the series or a team that you approach. There are, if you look at the website, there is of a team that you're, or organization that you're looking to work for, they'll have suppliers and sponsors as well that probably have quite small teams and little resource, which might actually be a great way of getting involved. So learn, the whole ecosystem for that championship and get involved in all aspects of it, because you could end up working on sponsor side of comms, but you're still working alongside the championship and still kind of building that interest. So there's lots of many different ways. You don't have to work just for the series directly. And then, yeah, on the other side of things, and sorry, Bradley, you were mentioning about your languages. I'm very jealous. I mean, if I could go back to school and do anything else, I would learn additional languages, because that would be my superpower in life, to be able to speak to anybody in the world in their own language, because it just breaks down so many barriers. And I didn't chime in on the living abroad and working abroad thing, but for Extreme especially, we're looking, we've got a wide kind of footprint. Obviously English is the base language, and I agree with Fiona that to be able to talk to us in English is definitely a help, because we would be managing it from the central HQ. But every country does comms completely differently. Getting into South America, where it's got multiple languages and very different ways of communicating. For example, radio is a much more kind of used medium there than perhaps in other places, and we do specific radio releases in South America, and just nobody can tell you those things other than the people that live and breathe those cultures. So actually, we have a network of freelancers internationally in our key markets that we look to engage, and you can't get better support than those people that live in those markets. Also, when it comes to events, there's less cost, less travel. When you're trying to be a lean organization, that super helps. And I've just completely forgotten the question that you asked me. Apologies.
It was just about how people can get experience, really, if they're studying.
Yes. Yeah, so apart from the internship, sorry, you can take it, if you can prove that you can use social media and maybe set up your own sort of fan pages and kind of commenting along on things, writing your own articles, they're really easy to set up a WordPress site. So if you're struggling to get the experience that you want, start to build it yourself, because being on comms, you also do, it's really helpful. Bradley's got a journalistic experience that is super helpful, and a lot of people transition over from being on the journalism side into comms, and that understanding of written content. We often have to be multi-skilled, and actually it's not all about outgoing comms to journalists. Often we're writing a lot of website content and actually being the reporters for the series as well. So yeah, just use your initiative and set up your own channels and start to prove what you can do, and it's kind of like a portfolio almost.
Becky, well, oh sorry, go for it.
With the internship thing, remember as well, there's a lot of freelancers out there like me who have big contracts with manufacturers, and I need help sometimes. And I've had some fantastic young people come through working with me. And also on the languages side, I've got a lady working with me called Tunda. She's Hungarian, and her English is improving unbelievably. She's writing press releases now with very tiny mistakes, because she works at it every single day. She got in touch with us. We have a racing driver in our management company, and she said, I'd like to do some social media for him. He was very young at the time, and she learned all of her digital skills, because also now in our job, it's not just press releases and traditional media, social media, digital media, content creation. These are really important skills, because people kind of want you to be the full package. So yeah, you don't always have to, like Julia says, you don't always have to go to the team or the organizer. There's plenty of people working in the sport who might have a small project for you, might need your help on something. There's like driver management companies, there's racing drivers. Get in touch with a driver from your country and say, look, I've been a big fan of yours. You're doing DTM or Formula E. Could I do some social media for you? There's plenty of things that you can do, but it goes right back to the start that we've said right from the beginning. It's about building that network, putting yourself out there. And it makes it much easier for you to carve your own path, rather than looking for a path that's already set in stone for you.
Fern Costa, and this has been echoed by a lot of people as well, says, I've been in comms and PR for part of 6 years, mostly in the public sector. How do I prove my worth and get my foot into motorsport PR, and lots of you have said you're in PR or comms already or in a different industry and you desperately want to move across to motorsport and PR. So how does one do that? Let's start with you, Fiona.
I think as I think Julia was saying earlier, that you have to really do your research and actually sort of contact as many different people as possible in as many different ways as possible. It's quite a fine line between really pushing yourself out there and not appearing desperate, which I think is a different sort of side. But if you're really passionate about something, and if you really have the belief in yourself that you're the right person for this job, that will be communicated that should be communicated in how you actually get in touch with people. And I think, but again, don't just look at teams, look at circuits who might be looking for volunteers for big events. Look at all sorts of different sort of companies that are subsidiary companies, as we said earlier, about suppliers and different types of people, because often that gives you an extra sort of string to your bow, that in terms of experience that you can then sort of weave into to offer to teams directly.
Liz, what do you think for people wanting to make the hop across from some other area in PR and comms?
I think don't be so crazy. No, I'm kidding. I'm quite mad. Don't do this for the money, kids. Don't do this for the money. I think, you have to, just to echo what Fiona was just saying, you have to think quite laterally. And Julia used a word that gets mentioned a lot in Formula E, which is ecosystem. It's like it's really a thing, and there is a huge organization, lots of different companies that are involved in any motorsport. And I think you have to think outside of the box a little bit. You have to look at the agencies that work with those sponsors and series partners and team partners. You really have to do your research, read all of the news, set up news alerts around the particular discipline of motorsport that you want to be involved in, or be more general and just look at motorsport as an industry as a whole. Understand a little bit more about how the commercial side of the business works, because that will help you too. And think about approaching the different partners that are involved. Or let's say, we had the announcement yesterday about Jeddah for Formula One. Maybe you have contacts in Saudi. Maybe Saudi is of interest to you. Maybe you were at school in the Middle East and you have some Arabic. Use all of these little things to connect the dots and use these little opportunities, and just think more laterally is what I would say. It's not just one direct route in. And use your existing contacts and connections. Use the social media platforms that we have available to us now to make more contacts and connections. And don't be frightened to ask for help. I would say a lot of us assume that people maybe know that we're looking or that we're interested, and totally I agree with the not coming across as being too desperate either, because nobody wants a desperate PR person. That's the last thing that you want. But definitely reach out to your contacts and say, just as Bradley was saying earlier, when you're looking for someone, you use your contacts and you say, who's good? Use your contacts in the same way to say, those of you who are already working in PR and communications and want to shift, use your contacts and say, I love this and I want to stick with this, this field, but I want to move into a different area. And you'd be very surprised actually at the warm response you get from people. We all want to fundamentally help each other out. So that's what I would say.
I think also don't be afraid to speak to people. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone, which is, I know it's quite an alien thing for anybody under 25 these days, but actually pick up the phone and actually speak to somebody, because even if that person hasn't got a job available, they'll say, oh, I spoke to somebody else. As you say, we all talk to each other in different championships. You could say, oh, I spoke to somebody recently who sounded really passionate, really enthusiastic, and she or he might be perfect for you. And you can just pass it on. But, unless you make that first call, you'll never know.
You definitely have to be brave. Fiona is spot on. You can't be a shrinking violet in this line of work at all. You have to be somebody that's good at picking up the phone, is good at articulating what makes you special in a non-arrogant, very comfortable way. I think that's really, really important. If you're frightened of putting yourself out there, you need to consider whether or not PR and communications is really the right dynamic for you. And that sounds absolutely brutal, but you can have the very best education, but it won't help you if it's not in your nature to put yourself forward. And that's the kind of thing that either is in you, or you can learn from a really good mentor. We spoke about mentors earlier. From my perspective, some of the best PR people, and I was really lucky to have an incredible mentor in my first PR job, but some of the best PR people are actually former journalists, because they understand what makes a story, they understand what news is, and they know exactly what the journalist is looking for. And that's a big part of our role, is making sure that we provide our audience with what they need. So I think don't just consider PR and communications, but also look at the field of journalism as well as an access point to what we do. I think that's really important.
I think as well, a lot of people say, I want to work in motorsport. Oh, I'll do PR. I find that a lot. I get a lot of people come to me, oh, I really want to do what you do. And I say, okay, let's have a chat on the phone. So I talk to them, and actually they want to work in motorsport. They want to go to the racetrack. And yeah, that's great. But you have to be first and foremost a communicator. That's what you have to be passionate about. And I think that's probably what connects all of us here today, is we all like communicating, finding the way to get the right messages to the right people. The fact that it's in motorsport for us is a bonus because it's something that we love, but you have to love communication, marketing, PR, and then apply it in motorsport rather than
people. You have to really like people.
Yeah, I can tell within a second when I meet someone who wants to come and work with me. I can tell within a second if they're going to be a good PR person or not. It's a personality type. You can't become it, I don't believe. Well, maybe you can become more that way, but it's definitely, you need to want to help people and to be that friendly face when you haven't slept for 5 days. You know, Fiona and I work at the 24 hours of Le Mans, and it's actually some form of torture by the end of it, because you haven't slept for a week, you've stayed awake for the entire 24-hour race. It's 40 hours that you've been awake, and now you've got to write the press release to say that you came 7th, and you're really trying to dig deep. You have to really enjoy communicating, because otherwise you just sit and cry.
Julia, final word.
Yeah, we were talking about moving laterally. I mean, I moved laterally from other sports into motorsports 18 months ago. Really, that was the result of scouring LinkedIn for jobs, looking at everything that was going. I saw a job come up, which I actually thought was for Formula E when I first read it, but because Extreme E was launched by Formula E, it really took until I'd actually hit send on my release to realize, on my CV, to realize, because it was an automatic reply thing. I looked through it and realized they were actually talking about Extreme E, which I hadn't even realized existed. But when I read up about it, I mean, it's motorsport at its heart, but it is also about more than that, and it's about sport for change. And actually, it fitted much kind of more into my experience, and I think that's probably what the strength was for me. And I guess most people on this call are pure motorsport, but I guess that's Extreme E was the opportunity for me, because it wasn't just about motorsport. That is the heart of it, and that's the bread and butter. But being able to prove that you've got skills maybe outside of the sport sometimes is helpful. And you know, sports communications, there are so many transferable skills. It's not, you don't just have to look at motorsport. I mean, that limits you. You know, there are hundreds of other sports out there that you can try and get into, and it's all relevant experience. It all involves press operations, building profile, you know, the bread and butter bits of press packs and behind the scenes, you know, how to run a press office and how to respond to media inquiries, understanding media landscapes. That's all transferable. You know, the facts and what you're talking about, if you can get all the kind of base skills about, you know, your actual writing and being able to prove, you know, what you can do style wise and how quickly, and being able to respond to things, those are all transferable skills. You don't have to build that up in motorsport. So don't be afraid to look outside of motorsport as well. You can always move laterally. It's again that experience in when you're applying, acknowledging that maybe you don't have the motorsport skills, but you do have the skills of running sports comms, and that's totally transferable.
We are at the end of our webinar. We've already overrun a little bit, so I apologise. But I just wanted to come back to the poll, because I asked at the beginning, what form of motorsport would you most be interested in working in? And as ever, 80% of people, well, 79% of people, if I'm going for accuracy rather than just rounding up, have gone for Formula One, 36% Formula E, and then you've got WEC at 18, World Rally at 13, Extreme E at 23, and others at 18. So just looking at that, I would say if you are looking to get into motorsport, maybe don't follow the masses, go where people aren't necessarily going, and create your niche there, create, you know, your network, and then you can have the aim of working in Formula One. But as I say to everybody who wants to be in any form of motorsport, don't expect to land yourself a job like Bradley in, you know, the best team, working for the best people at the very top of your game straight away. You might have to start at the bottom. And that's not a bad thing, because you can make mistakes, you can learn on the way up, and you can build a platform for yourself to eventually get to the very top, as all of these people have in their own fields. And then you're ready for that exposure, whatever it may be. So that would be my little bit of advice from not being in your world. But there we go. Hopefully you can see the poll result there. I just want to wrap things up really. Have we got time for everybody just to give a final little piece of advice for people watching? If we start with Bradley, because he's probably the busiest, having just completed his 7th World Championship for Mercedes and getting ready for Lewis Hamilton to potentially win his 7th world title in Turkey. Bradley, piece of advice for anyone watching, please.
Oh, sorry, you put me on the spot here, Jenny.
I have, but you put me on the spot lots of times, so I thought I'd...
That's very true. That's very true. I think it comes back to the theme that's been there all the way through. The people who've got the character, got the values, got the behaviors and the mindset, find their way into this business. So take every opportunity, find the opportunities that are close to you and build from there. Don't always shoot for the stars, but be prepared to land on the moon, or maybe somewhere, you know, in between before you get to the stars, and just build, acquire every bit of experience you can, and grab every opportunity that's there, because you never know where that one will take you. And have a target, have a goal and an objective, and write it down and know where you want to be, but accept that the path there may not be the one you thought it would be at the beginning. So you will get there if you are determined, and if you work at things with passion, with sincere effort and dedication, and you're open-minded to carry on learning every day. You know, every day is a school day is a much used cliche in our business. Feedback is a gift is another one that gets repeated a huge amount. So got to be open-minded to learn, and just keep on, know where you want to be, but be prepared to take unexpected routes together.
Good life skills lessons. Fiona.
I think to start with, don't forget the basics. Don't forget the basics of doing your research, being punctual, being polite, being professional. We're, as PR professionals, we're not in this job to stand there and have selfies done with the drivers. We're there to organise the drivers for something. Sorry, Bradley, ruined it for you now.
Another thing I do wrong.
But you know what I mean? It's our job to put other people in front of the camera and to put other people to the forefront. And I think also when you get onto this ladder in motorsport, don't forget that the people that you meet on the way up are very likely to also going to be the people you meet on the way down. So don't trample over people on the way up, because just treat people as you'd like to be treated yourself. That's it's a basic lifestyle tenet that we should all abide by.
Rebecca.
Well, Bradley and Fiona just stole both of the things I was going to say. No, one thing I was going to say, which is we've all said like really nice things that we can all do. There's also what you should not do, and a lot of the time, particularly on social media, I love the fact that so many people, and there's this huge generation of people coming through who are passionate and they've got really strong opinions on things, and they're putting them all out there. The truth of it is, when you work in PR, your opinion kind of sometimes has to stay your opinion, because you are paid to communicate on behalf of other companies what they would like to communicate. And it means that I'm sure everyone on this panel has opinions on things that they keep to themselves. When things happen, they don't put them on Twitter. We have a fantastic job, and we have very many privileges, but I think one of the things that you kind of have to sacrifice a little bit to work in PR is the right to say what you think all of the time. So I would just say that on social media, yes, be passionate, yes, have opinions, but let's not be over opinionated, because I would hate for someone to have their Twitter checked before they went for a job, and them just to have been a little bit over the mark on certain things, and it prevent them from getting them to where they deserve to be.
Julia.
I think everyone's got some incredible advice, and echo all of that. I think treat people well, be genuine to people, you know, build relationships. I think you don't always need a job out of it. You know, getting to speak to somebody and take them for coffee and ask them how they got somewhere and just stay close to them. I think that's also really important, like being in it for the long run, not just being too eager too soon, but you obviously want to get the balance, make sure people are aware that you're open to work. And just stay connected, you know, to motorsport. Obviously, if you're a fan of it, that's great. It's very easy to keep up to date with, you know, how all the different series are performing and who's going where, and sponsor side as well. But get signed up to different sports industry blogs as well. So there's a ton of things like iSport Connect, Sport Industry, Sports Pro, sport business that you can sign up for and get, you know, emails in your inbox every day. You're understanding how others outside of the sport are working, what campaigns they're working on. You know, it's good to have a broader kind of oversight as well. So just read up. I think LinkedIn is an amazing place to really get noticed. It doesn't have to be immediate. You know, engaging and building that kind of slow burn relationship and getting your kind of name out there is the way to go. And just keep at it as well. Don't drop your head. Your route to where you want to go might take many different paths, and it might not always be immediate, but you will get there if you put in the hard work and you're resourceful as well.
Liz?
I mean, what's left to say? No, I'm kidding. Obviously, I echo a lot of what's already been said. Fiona's point of treating everybody with kindness and respect. And I think one of my first bosses said to me, remember that you meet people twice, once on the way up and once on the way down. And engaging with everybody from, the person that's serving tea and coffee to the CEO of the business in exactly the same way, making eye contact and having grace and good manners will get you so far in life too. But my advice would be, think about why you want to do this. Think very carefully about why you want to do this, because it's in motorsport, and as in anything which is incredibly rewarding, it's really, really hard work. So be willing to be in the room, to show up, to put yourself out there, really, really importantly, put yourself out there and back yourself, believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you either. And that's a massive part of this job. So finding that line between having faith in yourself and being able to articulate that in a charming and graceful way is a real skill. And that requires practice and it requires experience. So that's what I would say. Think about why you want to do it and back yourself.
Go on, Bradley.
I would echo all of that, and I'd pick up one thing that Fiona said. It's way less deep and way less meaningful than what Liz has just referred to. Fiona talks about punctual. Many, many good things have happened to me in 20 years by being early. Very few good things have happened by being late. I can point to turning points in my career because I happened to be somewhere early. But the late people, especially the late PR people, tend not to get on very well because it betrays a lot of other things. So we always have a joke, Formula One time runs 5 minutes early. You know, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're already late. And that is such a sign of respect of others. It's a proxy for the good manners and the respect for other people that Liz talked about. But yeah, always be on time, or if not a little bit early. And that's a really good life hack for our business too.
And that rounds us out really nicely because we've overrun by 15 minutes, which is horrific in broadcasting terms. I don't have a producer here. They would have been going like, wrap it up 15 minutes ago. But thank you all for your time. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can get in touch using info@mmw2020@gmail.com. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? We'll put some stuff up on social media, and this will go out as a YouTube as well. So if you're watching later, thank you. And we hope you've enjoyed it. And from all of the panel, we shall say goodbye to you.